your
Free will? Imagine you go to a party and let's just say you're a hetero. That means you like the opposite sex. Since you're a man, that means you like women. So there are three women. You're an American individual, independent, unique. God's blessing on earth. And so you have the freedom to choose one of the three. Let's say for the past 25 years, every time you walk into society, people who don't look like you, have the same shade of skin color, demonize you. So, hello, اقرأ اسمك يا ربك. How's Muhammad? Tell him I said hi. In other words, you have an allergic reaction to, say, Caucasians. Now, one of the women happens to be white, okay? Now, your past kicks in, saying that I've had experiences with Caucasoids. They're not very interesting, so I'm not even going to take a chance. You have the freedom and the free will to move ahead and to have a relationship, but your past comes in. And your past is a container of wisdom and insight. You may like her, maybe her parents don't like you. You know, maybe they belong to a clan. So all these imaginations begin to kick in. So your past governs your decision about whether or not you want to go out with this person. Let's say the next two are, one is Persian, my country, the other is African American. The one from my country happens to be like 48. You're like 25. You say, well, you know, I can't go out with someone who's like 3 times my age. And women have an expiration date, like milk. You know. Now, you may not like it, the fact that, you know, there are expiration dates, but it's just true. You know, you may have all sorts of ideas about not wanting to have children, but at a certain point, your body is going to scream, I want a kid. Okay? Now, it may be that you may be very interested in this woman, but you come to realize that she may be a little too old for you. So, the last person is the African American. You go towards her, and she gives you like quotes from the Bible. So the hell with that. Now, in all 3 different areas, you've had the freedom to pick and choose. But there is something about your life, there is something about the experiences that life has offered you. There is something about the way you interpret those experiences that obstacles you from moving forward. Freedom and free will really exist insofar as you have the resources, the power to pick whatever it is that you want to do, given that you have the proper resources. It's like going to a buffet. There are 10 dishes. You have, let's say you go to the lunchtime at a round table. There are 10 different kinds of pizzas. Hello. Right? I mean, sure, you have the freedom to ask for a burger, but that would be stupid. Everything about our life is cause and effect. All of it is. If I was to ask you what 2 plus 2 is, you would say, you have the freedom to choose another number, so choose it. 2 plus 2 equals... Now that would be stupid. So one of the things that usually happens to us is the moment you know what the right answer is or what the right direction is for you, you usually take it. Knowledge always gets rid of your freedom and free will. Other options go away, except the one that you know. You only exercise freedom and free will when you're confused. That's the only way.
And knowledge does what it means.
Knowledge limits your options. You know, I have the freedom to eat ice cream. But every time I hold this container before me and I want to take a spoon and put it in my mouth, my triple bypass kicks in. The pass kicks in. And I become frightened. Not so much of death, I just don't want to die with pain. So I put the ice cream back in the freezer. If on the other hand, I was ignorant of the fact that my arteries are clogged, okay, and I'm not diabetic, and I'm not this, and not that, then I would just go ahead and eat the ice cream and pay the price later. But the more you know, the less free you are. And anyways, let's move on. Anyone else before we? No? Nothing? Okay. Elijah, go ahead.
So is that kind of where the idea is from?
You know, no one who doesn't know anything and who doesn't reflect and who has not too much knowledge about various aspects of life is not going to come to you and say, I am so happy because I don't know. Usually you know something, or usually you're oblivious to some things. Imagine you and I in a relationship. Can you imagine that?
I think we were in a relationship.
Oh, please. If you're in a romantic relationship, okay, good job. Now, I love you, you love me, all that stuff, okay? Now, I am building my future around you. We're going to buy a house together, you're going to get pregnant and all those things. Okay. It's an imaginary world, so anything goes. And so, as I'm walking around the lake one evening, you're supposed to be at work, I see you running around with him, holding hands. Now, prior to this moment, my life was revolving around you. Everything was smooth. Everything was fine. The moment I see this, my past 10 years of relationship with you all of a sudden shatters. I am psychologically broken. I am heartbroken. My intellect comes down to figure this out, but it's the feeling that matters now. I'm not broken intellectually, I'm broken emotionally. And in as much as I want to bring down my intellect to rescue me from this pit, it's not possible. It's just too much. My future about our relationship all of a sudden is in jeopardy. I have no idea. Then I come home and I lose control, despite the fact that I come to class and talk about forgiveness and compassion and being a stoic and all those things. They all go out the window in the realities of life. Okay. There are moments we're still living in the same house, but we're not talking. I want the past to come forth and I want our relationship to be smooth, but my experience doesn't allow me. Okay, I am held hostage by what I witnessed, which was you in a romantic relationship with him. What was your question?
Ignorance.
Ignorance, that's right. So there are moments where I want to come and lay next to you, but I am enraged because I know your body was next to his. There are moments where I want to come and make peace, but I am so upset because of what I saw and what you did to me and what you did to our relationship. And then I sit back and I say, you know, that night when I went out to run, what I really wanted to do was to go to Round Table and Skyline and grab myself a pizza. I should have done that. Had I done that, I would have never seen this. And if I had never seen this, our relationship would still be intact. So you can only claim ignorance is bliss if you have seen something, experienced something that contradicts, opposes where your life was going or where you wanted it to go. It's only when you know. And whenever you know something that's devastating, it's like a cross that you have to carry, and it's devastating. You know, kind of like if you have read the Gospel of, I think it's Luke or Mark or Bob or John, where he's in the Garden of Gethsemane and he says, let this cup pass by me. That I just don't want to do this anymore. It's too much, you know. And then he comes to realize that he's more than human. He catches himself and he says, you know what, screw it. I'd rather carry the cross and whatever. So, and I think as you get older, as you experience more, as you're broken more by life, and as you try to put your brokenness back together, you become much more conservative. That's just the way things are. You understand the pitfalls, all the bumps in the road. And so you move through life very, very cautiously. If my daughter was to come home with a 20-year-old, I'd probably like smack the crap out of her. Because I remember what it means to be 20. A 20-year-old is not ready for anything. گلی که خم به دادم پیچ و تابش ز آب دیدگونم دادم آبش به درگاه الهی کی روابی گل از ما دیگری گیره گلابش. You know, for the past 20 years I raised this kid, right? All of a sudden the instincts kick in. My daughter goes somewhere, runs into a bozo. They're instantaneously attracted to each other. She brings him home and she says, Dad, I love him. Really? You think I'm just going to let go of all of my efforts just like that because you like him? No. You'd be like Galileo, under house arrest. Anyone else before we... Nothing? Yeah. Satnam. Yeah. No, just from there. Please. Really? Take two then. Matt, yes, please.
So, if knowledge limits free will, then the more we sit here and learn, the more imprisoned we become. The fewer options we have afterwards, like knowing more limits the amount of free will that we have, so we become less free the more we...
So, you sit in this room, okay. I hope you don't mind. I'm going to have a relationship with Matt now. So, the way things usually work is in this particular way, as far as I think. You and I are not going to be immediately attracted to each other. There are cases which in Arabic and Persian we call ahl jazabe, that you go somewhere, your eyes meet, and you feel this tingle on the inside. You don't know why, you have no idea who this person is, but you just organically, naturally just gravitate towards this person, and 5 minutes after that, you're in the back seat of your car. The American way, fast and quick. Now, usually that's not the case. Usually the way relationships function is that through time. Now, the relationship you and I have is no different than the relationship you have with reading a book, finding a passage interesting. Relationships can be casual, it could be intimate, and it could be filled with intimacy and obligations and responsibility. These are different stages that you go through. Okay. Now, one of the nice things about us, and we'll talk about this when we get to Gilgamesh, is we have this ability to forget things, especially the most painful and devastating life experiences. There is a man by the name of Fariduddin Attar. Have you guys heard of him? Of course not. Attar is a Persian around the 12th century. In one of his books, Mantiq al-Tayr, which is the journey that these birds take towards wisdom or truth, this young man asks this gravedigger, you've been digging holes for the past 30, 40, 50 years of your life. Can you give me like a valuable lesson since you have been in the presence of death all of your life almost? And he looks at this young man and says, yes, I've been digging grave for most of my life and I've been dumping these bodies into these holes and then covering up with dirt. But never once have I ever thought of my own death. I never picture it. So even though there are things near you, there are things that you experience, it doesn't mean that it changes you. Now, sometimes learning is nothing but you collecting data. Okay, that's not learning. It's just you having information in your head. Sometimes when you have a lot of information, it takes a long time. You become like a bee. You sit somewhere and you bring the information together. You suture them up. You sew them together. Now you become knowledgeable. Information is all over the place. But the moment you say, you know what, I want to know what all of the stuff means. Now you sit somewhere very, very quietly, and you have to have enough passion. And they have to be relevant for you to sit somewhere, bring all this information together, and you say, okay, what exactly does this mean? How did it come from? And what does it have the power to do? The other part of, I suppose, information data or collecting data is that you bring them together, you become very, very knowledgeable. Let's say you know the ins and outs of the Gospels. Okay? And like me, you go to classes and you just talk gibberish about this and that. At a certain point, let's say you and I are in a relationship, I love you, you love me, I drop dead. But you want to be as stoic as Jesus Christ. You want to be as understanding. You want to let go. You want to live in the present. You want to say, let his soul be in thy hands. You want to be comforted by the fact that you know the New Testament inside and out, but how does your faith become under an avalanche of life's disasters? And you realize all you have is information, all you have is knowledge, but they offer you no help. So you get depressed. Okay. At a certain point during your depression, you say, I want this knowledge to live inside me. Now that becomes wisdom. That wisdom, I don't know where you can go to get it. You know, Socrates had said something relatively interesting, which is, if you want milk, you know where to go. Okay. If you want socks, you know where to go. But if you want wisdom, there is no place that says, House of Wisdom, come here and I'll give it to you. It usually takes a long, long, long time. And history doesn't really show us very many people who possess it. Just a few here and there. So no, sitting here doesn't get you anything, except a grade. Unless you happen to be tragically at the right time and right place in your life, where you've collected enough. You know, it's kind of like, you know, from the age 18 to about like 40, 45, 50, you just hang out with these losers. You know, and they're fun. Don't get me wrong. Losers are fun. You know, you smoke, you drink, you porn, you do all sorts of wonderful things. At a certain point, you watch yourself in the mirror, you know, and like Elizabeth Taylor, you get out of the bathtub, you look at your body and you say, man, I really, really, really look bad. Now, it's not that Elizabeth Taylor had not seen her body, you know, prior to that period. She had, but for some strange reason, she had the eyes, but she couldn't see. This time, she looks, she sees, and she feels. And the feelings are negative. And then she says, you know what? I want to jog every day now. So from 300, she goes to about 120. Does that make sense? Maybe not. It's okay. Anyone else? Yeah. Elijah?
Historically, is there any evidence that humans at one point had free will, or I think the concept is kind of instinctively created?
It really is a long debate. I think ever since human beings created writing, which goes to the cuneiforms in Africa, maybe Egypt, some 5,000 years ago, it's something that people, intellectuals, have been wrestling with. You know, do you have children? For those of us in this class who have children, will tell you that when kids come out, they're usually naked and all that. They don't come with clothes. And so they have no shame. They have no guilt. They don't go to a church and, repent because they came out naked. And because they are organically, not in a self-deceptive way, but organically just stupid, ignorant, what they do, they just go around, break things. They go near a very, very hot stove and they touch it and then they cry. I think this idea of free will and freedom exists when you're very, 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 very young. Let me give you an example. About 22 years ago here at Laney, I had a student whose name I will not say, but when he was 3, his father forced him to have sex with a prostitute at the age of 3. And when he had no idea what the heck his father was talking about, the father began to kick him, punch him, and he was forced to have sex. Now, his innocence was stolen from him at that age. When he came to my class, he was 20, 21, 22 maybe. He was enormously angry. You could just see it on his face. You could see it when he opened his mouth to talk. And so I guess the point I'm trying to make is, as life gives you experiences, it also removes certain freedoms away from you. Going near a hot stove, it's something you will not do again. Grabbing a sharp knife and running with it, it's not something you will do. If you went out with a smoker and that particular person wasted a lot of money or burnt a lot of money due to smoking, and if you have kind of learned a few things from that because your life was ruined and you felt it, not just thought about it, you just felt the fact that your life was ruined because you made this wrong decision. Next time you go on a date, your first question to this person is, do you smoke? Do you drink? That knowledge of the past, okay, obstacles you from actually enjoying a cup of coffee with this person, regardless of how attractive he or she may be. If you encounter someone like Donald Trump, the Teflon man, that nothing sticks to him, and when nothing sticks to you, it means there is no need for repentance. There is no need for forgiveness. You have the power to do whatever, and you don't have to answer to anyone. Once the element of shame is removed from you, then all possibilities are open to you. It's only when you get caught, either by another, by your own life experiences, then freedom is removed from you. Anyone else? No? No 18, 19, 20-year-old with questions? So these old people? Okay. Joyce, anything? Cookie. There are napkins in that bag for those of you. Matt, since you're there, can you keep the door open or put a chair by it so some air can get in, please? Thank you. Thank you, Abi. I was going to put some stuff on the board tonight just to talk about the evolution or the growth from the physical to perhaps more spiritual, but I'm not in the mood for that. So we'll just go right ahead with our first tradition or the first story. Before I do that, do you have any questions? No? Take notes? For what? No, don't take notes. They're useless. Yeah.
What grades mostly for the time?
I should be able to read all of them by the end of the week. What grade do you want?
Grade level?
Yeah.
Yeah.
F? A?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I laugh for like you're right.
So our first tradition is called the Epic of Gilgamesh. Any in this class have ever heard of it? Yeah? So. Gilgamesh, Epic of Gilgamesh. Sorry about that. I really don't want to be here. Before the invention of written language, cultures used to be oral. It's kind of like this class. Someone with a turban, a beard, comes in, there's a group of people sitting, and I've been chosen by our village, so to speak, for a variety of different reasons. Maybe I'm just the oldest in the community. Maybe my beard looks good. Maybe there's a twinkle in my eye. Who the hell knows? Maybe there's something about my voice that as all of you sit around the campfire, I walk, I stand in the middle, and I begin to tell stories. Nobody writes anything down because writing isn't there. And my telling you a story is not meant for you to memorize. Stories are meant to be felt. I'm not going to tell you about marriage. I'm not going to tell you about divorce. I'm not going to tell you about how I raised my kids. I'm going to tell you about the big stuff of life. You know, the Harry Potter stuff, the magical stuff. Death, afterlife, gods, My task for the next like 5 minutes or 5 hours or 10 hours while you're sitting by the fire, my job is to transport you to a realm that you can't go down here, can't find down here. My job for the longest time in our human history, to tell you a story so you could leave your body, go into the world of imagination, sit with the angels or some deities. And you don't need mushrooms for that. You don't need peyote for that. You don't need wheat for that. Stories. And the nice thing about our human community for the longest time is that once I am done, and once you have descended, dropped back into your body, the culture has trained you to say, okay, that was your spiritual experience. There are no caves to go into. You don't need to be a monk or a nun. You don't need to be a hermit. Go back into life. Be the married husband or the wife or the mother or the father. Be good to your parents. Live in society. The lion and the lamb lay together harmoniously. That was the function of language for the longest time in our history when it came to storytelling. Okay. Now, some of you in this class have journals. When you go home tonight and you realize that you haven't written anything down, you sit back and you say, okay, well, I'm in the habit of writing things on paper. What should I write about my day today? Well, you're not going to write about casual experiences. You're not going to write about experiences that are irrelevant and useless and cheap. You're going to sit back and you're going to say, okay, I woke up at 6. Did anything go inside me? Did a guy look at me that I keep thinking about? Did I get into like an awful conversation or a meaningful one? Did I run into a homeless person who just mesmerized me? Did I think about justice? Did I see some cops beating up some people? Did I see ice on the road? And what you realize is you and I write things down that are profoundly important and significant for us. That's your story of the day. When we talk about epics, the Epic of Gilgamesh, epics is not about one person having some experiences. You're talking about someone who is in life, exits life, goes somewhere, sees something that all human beings have in common, comes back only to realize that people are far too stupid to listen, to hear, to understand, to process, so begins to write. Epics have universal components to them. They're about birth, they're about ignorance, they're about power, they're about loss, they're about love, they're about grief, they're about loneliness, and it's about transformation, and then back to society. So for those of you in this class who are depressed, this epic will do you good. For those of you in this class who are in love, this epic will do you good. For those of you in this class who have friends, you may come to realize you don't really have any friends. Okay? Now, the Epic of Gilgamesh, up to date, they have found roughly about 25 tablets. That means the following. The ancient people have some experiences. They take wet clay, they put some stuff on it, they put it in the sun dries, people know that language, they begin to read the scripts, and then they have the story. Okay. The story is profoundly incomplete. And as the years go by, more tablets are found and more insights are gained from those tablets. Okay. Now, I have never read the entire story of Gilgamesh. When I was a kid, I read the Cliff Notes. You know those yellow books that used to be around? 5 pages. Okay. So I'm making most of the stuff up. For those of you who are interested, go read the book. I don't know if any of you in this class have ever sat back once in a while to ask yourself, why was I given this particular name? Why? I mean, why would your mom or your dad impose on you the name Matthew? I mean, it's awful. Because it's a huge weight. Because it comes from the Christian tradition. Iqra. Read. Not read casually. Read to understand, read to experience, read to feel, read to process, read to observe. And you just grab a book to read. You read the room. You read facial expressions. You read when someone is yawning. Then you say, okay, I'm a little boring. Let me increase my volume a little. Maybe they can wake up. The name Gilgamesh has profound significance. It means an old man who desires to become young. Some of you in this class are very, very young. But you wake up on a Saturday or a Sunday and you look around you and everything is old. Your friends are old. I mean, it's people you've seen for the past 5 years. They have nothing more to offer you. Your room is old. The conversation is old. Parents are old. The way you think about things are old. You're desperate for life. Remember that saying in the New Testament? The birds have the trees, the foxes have the earth, but Son of Humanity or Son of Man has no place to rest his head. Human beings are born restless. We don't have a home, and we are desperately looking for a home. You're single, you want to get married. You're married, you want to be single. You go on a vacation, you say it's too long, I want to go back home. You're home, you say I want to go on a vacation. I mean, human beings are really in a messed up position. Okay? Now, so the first thing you need to understand about this particular story is the following. It's one of those universal truths. It doesn't matter your age. It doesn't matter your race. Nothing about your life matters. All you need to know is the following. You will feel old. And you don't have to be 70 or 80 or 90. For those of you who've been in relationships for more than 4 months, you know exactly what the hell I'm talking about. So, you're looking at a man, for some strange reason, he comes to a place where he realizes that everything about life ages him, sickens him, removes life from his interior, and he wants to become young, he just doesn't know how. Now let me tell you a little bit about Gilgamesh's parents. One is a goddess. She's like Mary. She's like Venus. She's feminine, but she lives in paradise. The other is a mortal man, flesh and bones like me. And that's the second thing you need to know about the story. And remember, this is before Christianity, Judaism, Hinduism, Buddhism, and Islam. It's a really, really, really old story. In fact, it's the first story ever to be written and given to human beings. So for those of you in this class who are in a relationship and you want to be forever happy, it's not going to happen.
Why? Well, why would it happen?
Because that's not the way our organism works. I love Zachary's pizza, but my capacity is maybe a slice and a half. I love going to Europe. My capacity is 5 days.
Isn't that like a personal?
No, it's universal. Do you go shopping? Why? Won't you just be happy with the things you have? Because it's old. Yeah, because you look at them and you've seen them day after day after day after day. Look, there is nothing wrong with simply accepting the fact that life is fucked up. There's nothing wrong with it. I mean, they're painful truths, but they are truths nevertheless. Do you know Van Damme? He's this martial artist actor. He used to be really, really like good looking, i.e. hot, when he was younger. But now that he's old, he's ugly. When you look at him, you want to vomit. Now, Van Damme, as far as I know, has married like 7 times. 7 times. His 7th wife is his first. He had to go through 6 women to realize what he had was really good the first time. See, old, see? That's how it is. Now, there is something very unique about Gilgamesh, and that's Gilgamesh has been chosen by the gods. In other words, there is something about Gilgamesh that the gods really, really, really love. It's like God breathes his spirit into this dust, let's call him Adam, and says, I really, really like you. I hope one day you can become like me. He doesn't say that to the cat or the dog or the rat, only to the human being. Okay? Now, because Gilgamesh is the creation of the gods, he has things that most of us do have, but don't really recognize or realize. Gilgamesh is profoundly beautiful, physically. And when he opens his mouth, people are just attracted to the way he speaks and the tone of his voice. Gilgamesh is a king. Every single one of us in this classroom, regardless of your position in life, you have a certain amount of power over other people. That makes you a king. That makes you a queen. You can push them around. You can impose your will on them. You can exploit them. Gilgamesh is strong and powerful. Here's the tragedy of a man having a lot of power, or any person having a lot of power, but being restless. Not only do you damage yourself with the power given to you, but you also damage other people. Some of you in this class, biologically, physically speaking, you're just very attractive. When you go to a party, what happens? People come to you. They want to talk to you. Maybe you want to have a fling. They give you all of their attention. Well, that's power. Now, how do you and I use that power? Well, we have cheap conversation. We show them a lot of skin. We have sex until they get old and then we trash them. What happens to a human being who is restless but has a lot of power? Use people, use everything. So when people marry, the person who sleeps with the woman is not the husband, but Gilgamesh. He blesses them in his own way. Now there comes a point where we, the people, being oppressed by those who are beautiful, by those who have power, there comes a point where you and I begin to complain. Where do we take our complaints? We take our complaints to the gods. Not to ICE, not to the governments, not to politicians. Directly to God. And the gods come together and they say something really interesting. They say, look, we made this man, right? We gave him all of these divine qualities, but he doesn't know how to use them well. And do you know why he doesn't know? Because he has forgotten. Let me give you an analogy of what it means to forget and what it means to remember, what it means to experience. Satnam? Imagine that I am walking around the lake and I see Satnam. This is just an analogy. It's not real. Okay? He looks sad. So I go to him. And I am somewhat lonely too. I say, would you like to have a cup of coffee? He says, yes. Then I say, well, if I have a casual conversation, he's going to run away. So you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to push the trigger points. Let me go on this hunt. Let me see what makes him sad. Let me see if I can find a memory inside him that brings him to life, where he wants to talk about it for the next 5 hours. And I find it. He's an immigrant. A stranger now in a strange land. He misses his people, the smell of his land. He's amongst people he doesn't know, doesn't want to know. I'm an immigrant. Now, rest assured, I didn't have him or go with him to Pete's to have coffee to talk about immigration, what it means to be an immigrant and various policies. I am lonely, I want out. He is sad and lonely, he wants out. At a certain point, he looks at me and says, Amir, yes? I have never spoken of these to anyone. I feel so comfortable with you. I have undressed him emotionally and intellectually. Yes, it feels good that he whispers his stories in my ears. Then I say, listen, Pete is going to close shop in about 10 minutes. I don't live very far from here. We can go home, I'll make you a cup of coffee, maybe you can have some food, and then you can continue telling me how miserable you are. Because that sounds really good. And I get him engaged in my life. Get some onions and chop them, potatoes and chop them. We're going to make dosa tonight. For those of you who may not know what dosa is, how about chicken tikka masala? You know what that is? Okay. Yeah, me too. And now it's midnight. I look at him and say, Satnam, it's a little late now. I'm a little tired. Why don't you sleep in my bed? I'll take the sofa. He says, Amir, no, that's improper. We'll share the same bed. We'll put a pillow right in the middle. So that sounds great. And then, of course, you know how relationships come about, right? You look at someone, you don't know why, how, when, who, what. You just like them. And if you spend some time with them, you become infatuated, you spend more time, you become obsessed, you spend more time, you fall in love with them. After 2, 3, 4, 5 months, he looks at me and says, Amir, I love you. I love you too. On the 5th month, I remember the name Gilgamesh. Things get old. And I say, listen, Saddam, this has been a fun ride, but it's not working out. But why? What did I do? You didn't do anything. I just want to go to the mountains and figure out who I am. I throw your things out. And like Elijah, I say, you have free will and you have freedom to think however you want to and feel however you want to. Time passes. One day I go home and I realize, man, I don't like being alone. So I go around the lake again. Brian, is it? Brandon. And I run to Brandon. By the way, I'm heterosexual. Just in case my wife all of a sudden comes in. Right? Brandon. Now, this is the way it usually works. I forget my experience with Satnam. I forget how love is created. I forget how boredom is created. And because I forget, I will find myself attracted to him, and then to her, and then to her, and then to him. And this cycle will continue. Unless, as I'm walking around the lake, being lonely and miserable, and coming to realize that perhaps it is part of the human condition to be forever alone, despite being married, despite having children, despite believing in Jesus Christ. There are moments you're going to find yourself completely abandoned by everything about life. You sit somewhere. You go for a walk, it doesn't work. You go to the church, it doesn't work. You watch a movie, it doesn't work. You have sex, it doesn't work. It doesn't matter what you do. Nothing works. The only way I can stop myself from another relationship, when I see Brandon, I remember how things evolved with Satnam. You walk, your eyes meet. Somehow, magically, you say, I feel something. That feeling is positive. And what is it that we do when something gives us pleasure? You want more of it. How do you create more pleasure? Well, you go to Brandon. You say if he has free time, if he wants to have coffee, if he wants to have dinner, if he's willing to give me his number. And then the more time I spend with him, the more I want to be around him. It's like anything else in life. If you have children, but your friends are losers, that is what your kids will eventually want to become. We mimic what we see. If on the other hand, before making this relationship evolve, blossom into something, I look at Brandon and I say, look, wait a minute. I remember something. How one remembers, I don't know. I remember how this thing happened. You look at someone, you like them, you spend time with them, you fall in love with them, you become roommates. Then you engage in politics of life. Then one morning you wake up, you look at him, and you feel absolutely nothing. Do I want to repeat the same mistake? Now, if you happen to be intellectually honest and if you have the emotional capacity, you say, you know what? I'm not going to exploit another human being to get myself off. I'm not going to fall in love for all the wrong reasons. I will go out with Brandon, not because I'm going to fall in love with him, but because I know I will get old and I need someone to drive me to Kaiser. Now that is a good relationship. The problem with remembering is that it comes with a lot of pain. It's painful to remember that despite having been here for 40 years, I am from Iran. It's painful to remember that you are black. It's painful to remember white history. Most of the things about us and our relationship with life are painful. And the only way we can survive them is by forgetting. And the only people who are able to remember, okay, and keep remembering and not forgetting are those who have the capacity to no longer desire to be abused by their own ignorance, their own power, and other people's abuse and power. So when you talk about learning, you need to understand that learning is painful. It is really painful to understand how you and I fall in love. I mean, look. This is me. Okay? Kendra, Abi, my apologies. And Olivia. I have 5 senses: the eyes, the ears, the nose, the tongue, and the taste and the touch. My eyes okay? My eyes look at this woman. I don't know why and I don't know how, but my eyes say attractive. It is organic. She's not my soulmate. My body simply reacts. She's attractive. Now, what happens when there is something that you find to be attractive? Well, it's a positive experience. Positive experience gives you pleasure. And if I keep thinking about this woman, I begin to desire her. But this desire at this stage is casual. Like all the other things that come our way, and we look at them, desire them, and then we forget. If I keep thinking about her, desire appears. Okay? Then eventually I will walk towards her. If she doesn't smell good, this attraction goes out the window. This is not magic. And it's not spiritual. This is just a science of how we function as organisms. If she looks good and she smells good, I say, hi, how are you doing? And she has this awful tone of voice. How are you? Do you really want to be around that? The answer is no. And so you know what you're going to do? You're going to put the attraction of your eyes and the attraction of your nose on the cross and you say, fuck this, I'm not hanging out with this person. Imagine now she shows you a lot of skin. And if you happen to be like my mother-in-law, who got burnt and was rushed to San Francisco, if you look at the back and her arms, her skin is like crocodile skin. And despite the fact that she smells good and she looks good, okay, your eyes will look at the back and her arms, and you may not have the capacity to endure what you see. And you say, do I really want to touch that? And the answer is no. So next time you go somewhere and you find someone attractive, you have nothing to do with any of this stuff. Your organism has the intelligence, has the wisdom to tell you who's attractive and who's ugly. Okay? Once you have this desire, if you keep playing with this person's image, there comes a point where you say, I want her. It's no different than I want a Tesla, I want a house, I want a car, I want a cup of coffee. If you keep playing with the want, what you will have is need. I need her. Now things are getting emotional. I need to see you. I need to talk to you. I need to sleep with you. It's no longer a want. And whenever things get to a place of need, now your journey begins from not having to having. Every time there is a need inside you and you pursue something, you become a political animal. Do you have the resources to get what you want and what you need? If you don't have the resources, you will have the want, you will have the need, but you will never have it in your hands because you don't have the budget for it. At this age, I don't have the budget of patience. So when you email me saying, I want to come to your office and ask you questions, I don't have the resources. At this stage in my life, patience is a poverty that I have. I don't have much of it. Now, what usually happens then is eventually you're going to get to this person, Janet. All the fantasies, all the imaginations, all the dreams that you had about her, now you can actually experience them through your 5 senses. There comes a point where you are satisfied. The goal is reached. It's like you keep fantasizing about pizza, you go somewhere, you sit, you have 10 slices, and when you get to the place of satisfaction, you get bored. And you know why you get bored? Because it's old now. It's no longer as interesting. Do you have any questions, comments before?
What's the doctor for?
I'm sorry? The first thing gets.
We're not the same.
We're the same.
You're not the same as you were when you were 20. You're not the same as you were 30. You're not the same. You change. So that keeps the person interested.
No. What you have is your desire may change from, say, watching Bluey or Pinocchio to now watching Born Identity. It may be that your taste buds in movies have changed. But what is it that all movies have in common? Movies inspire you, they engage you, and after a while you either get bored and the pleasure is done and you turn off the TV and you go away. The desire itself doesn't change. What you desire changes all the time, and I agree with you. But if you were to remove the waves, the superficial aspects of desires, Whether you like him or your son or TV, just look at desire itself, the component called desire. Okay? And what it always have in common is that something out there attracts you. When you keep thinking about it, feeling about it, you begin to need it. Then you move towards it. Then eventually, if you're lucky, you will get it. Then you will play with it. Then after a few months, you put it on the pavement in front of your door for someone to take. Now, there is nothing wrong with that. Look, when you're 18, all you want to do is have sex. Nothing wrong with that. At a certain point, you get to be 20 and you say, you know what, sex is fine, but can we have like some conversation as well? Sex and conversation is fine. Afterwards, you say, you know what, can I have some meaning in this conversation? You're with the same person, but now you demand different things. Why do you demand different things? Because the old stuff no longer works. Now, it doesn't mean that you need to divorce the person. Sometimes it does, but oftentimes no. It just means that no one or no thing is this infinite well of inspiration. All of us get old, including life. Anyone else? Abi? Kendra? Intentions? There is a branch that comes from the Islamic tradition. They're called the Naqshbandis. There are some people that will leave imprints on your physical body. There are some people who leave, let's say, scars or writings on your mind. And there are some people who leave writings on your heart. Okay, like you've had an experience. Let's say you loved your mom and you were very close to her. She was, in fact, your entire world. And then she passes away. And it's an experience and it's a loss that you can never forget. Okay? So that stays in your soul. And every time you walk around the lake and you see a mom holding a daughter's hand, you're reminded and you just sit somewhere, you become very, very sad. Okay? And it's not so much you thinking about it, it's just mostly feelings. Okay? And it's intoxicating. You get drunk by those feelings. Now, let's say that Brandon comes to this class because his boss told him, if you take a world religions class, right now you're getting paid $32 an hour. If you get an A in this class, your pay will jump to $48. His intention is not here to learn. He may camouflage it, right? His intention is here to get an A so he can get $42. Okay. That's his intention. Now, once in a while, he may look himself in the mirror and say, when did you become a Judas? Why would you want to sell your soul for a grade? Okay? Now, he may have those things once in a while, those pangs of conscience. But for the most part, he says, my intention for signing up for this class is that, getting $42. Someone who has perhaps a good amount of power in life and doesn't really need money and perhaps is at a place in their life where they don't really care about grades or graduation, they say, you know, I'm going to look at the summer schedule and see what interesting classes are being offered. Okay? And I want to be inspired. And religion sounds inspirational. Comes to class, okay, that person looks at me, looks at the way I speak, looks at the way I dress, the way I look, says, nah, that intention is not met. So when you talk about intentions, there are certain parts of you that demands certain things, and you walk purposefully, okay? It's not like most days you wake up and say, okay, how am I going to like pass the day? I just want something out there to be interesting enough to distract me from 8 in the morning until like 10 at night so I can then pass out. Intention means that you're aware and you're mindful and observant of certain things. Sometimes intentions are rooted in a good amount of pain. If I was to give you my own experience, for example, today I had 2 cookies. And I knew why I was having them. Because I don't eat, I can't have anything sweet or sugary. Okay. I just said, fuck it. If I die, I die. It's okay. I just need to have 2 cookies. Okay. And it's because I just missed having something sweet. My kids aren't sweet. My wife isn't sweet. This class isn't sweet. Nothing about life is sweet. Cookies are. So sometimes, let me perhaps do this. There was a woman, she was Indian about maybe 30 years ago or so. She was tired of dating casually. She was about 32, 33 now. She said, you know what? I just want to go out with a man who has a good head on his shoulder, a man who's mature, a man who comes from a good background. So she says, I've been dating for the past like 10 years, no good. I'm just going to go somewhere quiet, and I'm going to create a list of the qualities I want in a man. And I'm then going to send this list to my friends and tell them, if you find a man with these qualities, send them my way. So after 6 months, the list is complete. She emails this list to her friends. And then after about, I think 2.5 years or so, a friend calls and says, I think this is a person who has what you're looking for. They go out. Now, what this man doesn't know is that she has taken her sheet of paper and she checks all these boxes. What she doesn't know is this man also has a checklist, and he too is checking the boxes. Now, why would you have a list of qualities you're looking for in a man? Well, because you were 18, you went out with a lot of losers, you had a different way of defining what fun is, what pleasure is, who you are, what you want to do with your life. What you do at the age of 20 is unacceptable for the most part at the age of 30, 35. You're no longer 20, okay? Psychologically, something about you has matured. Now, why do you have a list? Because you don't want to repeat the same mistakes. Sometimes you walk into things with intentions because there's a good amount of pain that lives inside you. Because you're tired of making mistakes. You're tired of repenting. You're tired of regret and remorse. Does that? Maybe not. Anyways. Anyone else? Where were we in regards to Gilgamesh? Somewhere. Okay. So, Gilgamesh uses his power in all the wrong ways. The gods up there say, we need to bring someone into this man's life so he can remember what it means to be human. Cookie?
They're really good. Peanut butter.
Have you made them? Who made them?
Like Reese's peanut butter crunch.
Do they have butter in them? Do they have sugar in them? Do they have chocolate in them? Yeah.
Wait, you mentioned in the first class that you had like
Cookie?
that you had like a triple bypass.
Yes.
Why can't you eat like sugar or like you not have any sugar or
My father and my father's side, they just have bad genes. And so whenever I eat anything that's fatty, it just gets stuck. And then it kills you. 85% of the population have a very, very painful death. Really, really painful. 85%. I mean, I had eclairs every day. Do you know what they are? Now I can only just like close my eyes and think about them. Any other questions? No? Really?
You're trading a flavorless life for hopefully to be in the 15% of painless death.
Two of my aunts are diabetic. They're in their 80s. They can no longer move their bodies. One of them can't see. Both of their husbands are dead. The kids are taking care of them because nursing home in our country, I mean, it's there, but people don't favor them that much. In the past 10 years, about 7 of our friends have had cancer and passed. 4 of them currently have cancer. And I guess the point is, imagine you happen to be a person of color, like brown, and you heard that immigration officers are just everywhere now. And out of 100 people who walk out, people of color who walk out, 85 of them get caught. And they spend the rest of their days in some cell somewhere. And let's say you want to go out and your mom says there's a good chance that you may be taken, or you may want to stay, and someone says, there's a 15% chance that you may be okay. The more tragedy or the more you see, the more knowledge or insight you have, the more cautious you become. I think it's automatic. There was a movie with Michael Douglas, Morgan Freeman, and a few other folks, and I think we may have talked about it in class, where Michael Douglas is a 7-year-old guy who's going to get married to a 25-year-old. But at a certain point, all these old people are standing in the hotel room and they want to change his mind about marrying this young person. But Michael Douglas all of a sudden begins to scream and shout and says, how did it happen? When did it happen? Why did it happen? I was 20 just a couple of days ago. How did I get to be 70? Sometimes you just don't want to accept your fate. The fact that you've been given bad genes, or there are certain realities about your life. And you just say, screw it, I'm just going to go out there and do what's really bad for me, but I'll do it nevertheless because I don't think I'll get caught. You know? Can I tell you a story? It's a story that I borrow from Jean-Paul Sartre. He's a French philosopher, existentialist. He's one of those tortured souls. You're just born this way sometimes, just being miserable. There is a story that he has about this young man going to the 3rd floor, but on the 2nd floor, one day he sees this door being cracked open a little. He looks through this cracked opening and he sees this young woman dancing naked. And remember what we just put on the board. Your eyes see something. She's very attractive. She has an attractive body. Something about your organism. And remember the power of sex that lives inside all of us. He just sits by the door and watches this woman dance. And he does this day after day after day after day. And then one day as he's driving home and fantasizing about, watching this woman dance again, he says, why don't I stop by Subway, get myself a foot-long turkey sandwich and watch this woman dance and eat my sandwich. And so that's what he does. He's sitting on the floor, watching this woman dance without her noticing him. And all of a sudden he feels a hand on his shoulder. He turns around and there is her mother. "What are you doing?" she asks. And she peeks through the crack and there's his daughter. She says, "You've been watching my daughter dance? Does she know?" And for the first time, what he has is conscience. He feels bad for what he has done. He feels as if he has transgressed her private space. And he looks at this old woman, the mother, and begins to cry and begins to ask for forgiveness. And he waits for this young woman to get dressed, and he also asks her forgiveness. And I guess the point I'm trying to make is the following. Going back to Elijah's question about freedom and free will, I think the less you know, the freer the freer you are in moving around life, the more you know. And it's not so much intellectual knowledge. Intellectual knowledge means nothing. The fact that someone can kind of tell you the ins and outs of the Bible, that has zero value. Right? But someone who feels, that understanding is beyond the mental, it's more emotional now. It's like you cross the line in your relationship and this person left you. And you can't forgive yourself for having done what you did. And time passes, some parts of you are healed, you go into a different relationship. You still have the power to do what you did, but you also understand how it feels to be alone, how it feels to be lonely, how it feels to betray or be betrayed. So you kind of tame your freedom a little bit. You move around life very, very cautiously. Now, thank you, Abi. One of the things about Gilgamesh is that he doesn't have conscience just yet. He can roam around and continue to exploit people. Okay? But the gods, because they like Gilgamesh, and this is another thing that you need to kind of notice, that, life creates freaks like Michael Jordan, like Kobe Bryant, like Mike Tyson, like Magnus Carlsen. Just because you desire to be a boxer, it doesn't mean you're going to be a Mike Tyson. You just want to be a boxer. Just because you want to learn, it doesn't mean that you can. And the point is, some people are just chosen. I don't know how. Either by nature, by God, their genes, who the hell knows? There are gifted people in different arenas of life. You have one Malcolm X and you have all these counterfeits. You have one Mike Tyson and then you have all these counterfeits. Counterfeits are plenty. The real stuff, one or two, max. Okay? Now, Gilgamesh is chosen by the gods. Why, how, I don't know. But what has been chosen by life is going to be protected by life. How? Well, you and I have a tendency of forgetting. What is it that we forget? What was your name? Stephen. You remember you were 20? Of course you do. You're no longer 20. But myself, I'm not very mindful of the passage of time. That each day adds a wrinkle to my face. Each day my back bends just a bit more. Each day I get closer to death. One of the nice things about not remembering these facts of life is you and I are able to live comfortably. We can continue to pursue things that are stupid and ridiculous and infantile.
How do I forget the bills? If I can forget the bills, and I can live comfortably.
The truth is, both you and I know, there are lots of ways to shave things from our life. The sacrifice is too much. And you only make sacrifices when? You know this, Stephanie. If I was to tell you I'll call you at 6 o'clock tomorrow night, this is just an analogy. Are you going to wait by the phone? Why the hell not? Because I'm not worth your time. Because you and I don't have a relationship. Now, imagine if you and I were in love. Forgive me. If you and I were in love. And remember, in love relationships, no two people are equal. So you love me a bit more than I love you. And I say, Stephanie, I'm going to call you tomorrow at 6. You going to wait by the phone? For how long? Long time. Now, how are you able to make sacrifice? You love. The only reason we live our life the way we live our life is because we don't really love time. We don't love life. We don't love age. Things are casual, and there is nothing wrong with it. Because I think as life creates a Mike Tyson, as life creates a Floyd Mayweather and a Magnus Carlsen and a Muhammad Ali and a Bjorn Borg and a John McEnroe, life also creates freaks who say, you know what? I want to figure out time. I want to be aware of time. I want to be aware that I'm going to get old. And it's something we'll encounter when we talk about Buddhism. Because it's a stupid kid, 19-year-old kid. He looks at my beard and says, oh, his beard is gray. My beard is going to be gray at some point. If I'm going to get old, how should I spend my youth? And you got to be in love. You got to be in an intimate relationship with these ideas. And then you got to fall in love with these ideas. And once you fall in love with any fucking thing under the sun, now you have the capacity to make sacrifices. Sacrifice is only possible when you're emotionally entangled. Why am I not going to read your essays too closely? You're not in love with ideas. You want a grade. Why the hell would I want to waste my time reading bullshit? And I'm going to give you an A, not because I like you. Not because I want solar panels from you. I'm going to give you an A because I understand how miserable you are without really knowing how miserable you are. That this is a rat race all of us have no choice but to be involved with. Now, one of the lucky things about Gilgamesh is the gods like him. The way they like Bjorn Borg. The way they like Muhammad Ali. Can Mike Tyson speak like Muhammad Ali? No. Can Floyd Mayweather? He's a great boxer, but he doesn't have the personality and the charisma of Muhammad Ali. Muhammad Ali was a politician. He was like a prophet. So inasmuch as some of us in this class may be inspired and excited to live out these ideas, to be in these ideas, to fall in love with these ideas, it's not possible because we are not chosen. Our capacity is only one of excitement. Look, I am willing to sleep with you, but not be in a relationship. I will read this book to get an A, but not to live out the ideas. Now, what is different about Gilgamesh is that because Gilgamesh is chosen, the gods are going to come together and create an event or a set of events that will remind him who he is and what he is. Okay? Now, Gilgamesh has no idea what's happening to him. All he knows is that he's restless, he's using people, bullying people, harassing people. One night he sleeps and he has a dream. And that's the other thing you need to understand. Dreams are enormously significant. They are powerful and they are meaningful.
Every dream.
Not every dream. Most dreams are just stupid. Okay? Now, at different stages of your psychological maturity, Okay? If, for example, you're 18 and you dream of an underwear, sex is coming your way. Okay? If, on the other hand, okay, you're like 45, 50, and you have a dream about underwear, it has a completely different set of meanings. Okay? Now, because of course today we live in a very secularized environment, and by secular I mean it's just tables and chairs. Okay? If for the past many thousands of years our culture was mostly sacred, our emotions would be sacred. One of the best examples of what I mean by sacred emotions is the following. Read the book of Job. It's perhaps the oldest book of the Old Testament. What do you find there? In that book, every bad feeling that he has, every pain that he has, he takes it to God. He wants God to fix it. He doesn't blame anything down here. Not the thieves, not the robbers, not his wife, not the goats, not famine, not climate, none of those things. He has all the bad things that happened to him, sacred emotions taken to God. If there is mental illness, read the Gospel of Mark. Jesus doesn't say, oh, this guy is mentally ill, he needs pills. Exorcism. The more meaty your culture becomes, the more meaty your thoughts become, the more meaty your emotions become. You don't go to your therapist's office to talk about you've been exiled from the Garden of Eden. You go to your therapist because you want to talk about your father. If you examine the things you think about on a daily basis, it's mostly about the bills. Okay? Now, one of the things you need to understand about dreams for the ancient people, it was believed that it comes from the world beyond. The gods have something to tell you. Since you're not paying attention while you're awake, maybe you'll pay attention once you are given a dream. It's a favorite example of mine. I had a student maybe 3 decades ago where she sees herself in the bathroom by the toilet bowl, sitting. And she keeps looking into the toilet bowl. And she sees poop. Huge chunks of shit in the bowl. And so she puts her hand in the bowl. She grabs a handful, puts it in her mouth, chews it, swallows it, laughs, smiles, goes for the seconds and the thirds and the fourths and the fifths. And she comes to me and says, Amir, I've been having this dream like almost every other night. What does this dream mean? Okay. Now, a couple of days ago, I went to In-N-Out with the family. You wait for 45 minutes for your burger and fries. And you look at the people who work there. It can't be fun working there. I mean, maybe when you're young and it's your first job and it's your first paycheck, it's fun. But if you've been there for 2 years, behind the grill, looking at customers, you know, the same stuff. Do you want a number 2 or number 3 or number 4? You know? And people look bad and they smell bad and everything about them is bad. And you're in this shitty place for like 8, 9, 10 hours. Now it's really, really tough to go home and look yourself in the mirror and say, am I really just wasting my life working at In-N-Out? Pay the bills, fine. No problem with that. Okay? Is this really what I want to do? I mean, as a customer, I go there for 10 minutes, I walk out and I smell like the joint. I want to go home and like take a 5-minute shower because I smell like In-N-Out. What is the meaning of this dream? That your life is shit. Your job is like sitting in the bathroom. Every time you go to work, it's like looking into the toilet bowl. Okay? Every time you say hello to a customer, it's like eating a piece of shit. And when they leave, you say, thank you, please come back again. And you gotta do this. Eat the same shit for the next 8 hours. Now, since it's far too painful to be aware of this during waking hours, the gods look down on you, feel bad for you, see that there is great potential inside you, and they say, listen, you're more than welcome to continue to eat shit, but there is another way. Maybe take out a lot of loans, go to school, sacrifice your life for about 4 years, get a bachelor's or a master's, and then do something you like. Okay? Now, Gilgamesh has a dream. Now remember, because he's attractive, because he's beautiful, because he's powerful, there is nothing that he cannot do. In the dream, he sees this rock drop down and land right in front of him. He bends over in the dream, grabs the rock in hopes of picking it up and throwing it to the side, but he's unable to. He takes his dream to his mother Ninsun. And that's the other thing you need to understand. Ninsun is a goddess. It's a woman who lives in paradise. If you have a dream, you need to take your dream to someone who knows how to interpret the dreams in the right way. The dreamer, unless they're very, very advanced, they're never in the business of interpreting their own dream. Okay? So he takes his dream to his mother Ninsun and says, I had this dream, what does it mean? And his mother says to him, soon someone will walk into your life. It'll cause you a lot of hassle, a lot of headache. You will try to remove him from your life. But no, he remains permanent. If that doesn't make sense, let me give it to you this way. I am young, I'm strong, I am healthy. I have lots of money. I can do whatever I want at any time. I have the power to change and change the shape of life. One day I go to the doctor. The doctor says, there is something very strange in one of the scans. Let me do the scan again. Another scan. He calls me to his office and he says, I'm sorry, you have cancer, stage 4. I say, I have money, can't be removed. I am healthy, can't be removed. Maybe I can box it away, can't be removed. It is permanent. I have to live with it. Okay? Now, cancer is not fun. Pain is not fun unless you get to the last stage, which is one of acceptance. And that's far, far later, if you ever get there. Okay? It is really, really difficult for those of us in this class to have power over our lives. One of the awful things, Stephanie, about love is that right now you have power. If the phone call doesn't come at 6, you walk away. If he doesn't want to go to the theater with you, you'll go with your friends. If you want shoes and he won't buy them for you, you got money, you'll buy your own shoes. Yeah? You have power. What is most devastating about life is that when you get caught in a position where you have no power to make any changes and you have no choice but to live in the pain created by life and imposed upon you. Gilgamesh has never committed himself to anything. Serenity. It's good to see you. Time is it? Is it 8?
7:15.
It's 9 almost. Okay, another few minutes and then we'll go. The gods get together and another human being is created and they name him Enkidu. If Gilgamesh in the Sumerian language means an old person who desires to be young, Enkidu in the Sumerian language means the most innocent of mankind. Enkidu. Enkidu is not dropped to Oakland. He lives in the forest. He lives in Yosemite. He has never seen human beings. He is not part of the civilized world. And there is another thing you need to understand. Civilization, whether you read them in the Old Testament, New Testament, the Quran, it doesn't really matter what sacred literature you run into. Civilization is always a place of corruption. Always. Forest is always the place of innocence. Civilization is always the place of self-deception and dishonesty. And forest is always a place of purity and honesty. Always. Now, for those of us in this class who have had some traumas or events, painful events happen to our life, that is the cause of you and I living in the civilized world. People are there, as Freud would say, to harass us, betray us. Maybe they don't want to, it just happens. Okay? But then you and I, despite all the garbage that live inside us, you and I have the capacity to fall in love. Once you fall in love, that emotion takes you and puts you in the forest. You become innocent. For those 2 weeks, when those emotions live inside you, you are most forgiving. You sacrifice almost everything that you own for the sake of this emotion. Okay? So whenever you fall in love, consider yourself to have been born anew, but it only lasts for 2 weeks. Then the human elements come in. Jealousy, possessiveness, anger, demands of sorts. Okay? So, how does transformation come about? How do you civilize? How do you tame? How do you transform a human being who lives in a civilized world? He or she must encounter someone who lives in the forest. Now, I don't mean forest literally. What is Yosemite? Organisms that grow organically. If you read the Gospel of Luke, what you realize at a certain point is that Jesus looks at his disciples and says, listen, I've given you this stuff freely. Now go away, give this stuff to other people freely. Just in case someone asks you a question, don't think about what you have to say. Because thinking has to do with what you've learned, what you've read, what you've experienced. Put thinking on pause. It's the Father within you that will speak now, not you. If you happen to be open enough, organic enough, creativity will ooze out of you. You don't have to will it. It happens automatically. Okay? So what you have, Enkidu is the most organic. He lives in the forest, runs with the animals, eats with the animals, lays with the animals. Gilgamesh lives in the city. The only way any one of us in this class able to transform our lives is to encounter someone who is innocent, who is organic. Okay? For those of you in this class who've ever been to therapy, you don't need to put your hand up, but from the looks of this class, like almost all of you. Now, if you've been to therapy, what usually happens is this. You have a lot of stuff, you try to deal with them, you come to a dead-end road where you realize it's just too much, you don't have the tools, so you need someone professional, so to speak. You go to this person, but this person is a stranger to you. Okay, you have to warm up to them. Okay, so you give them the most basic aspects of your life, but that's not enough material for your therapist to work with. Okay, so after giving you some coffee, after chit-chatting, after 6 or 7 or 8 months, after it's cost you like $10,000, $20,000, then all of a sudden, something about you opens up organically. There is trust inside you, and you don't know how it came about. There is faith inside you, and you don't know how that came about. In other words, you feel profoundly intimate with your therapist. And he or she is listening to you without making any judgments upon you. And all of a sudden, something about you opens up and you spill out all the things that have happened to you for the past like 25 years. And you keep talking about it day after day after day to this person. Then at a certain point, something about you clicks and you understand. And that is your salvation. And it happens organically. Now, no one knows when these openings come about. All we know is that you want something, you keep at it, you try to figure things out, but befekr nazi hakim tache, that your intellect has only so much power. At a certain point, it just shuts down because it feels paralyzed. And in paralysis, you get sad and you get depressed and you become lonely. Okay? At a certain point, something about you opens up. Now that is the Enkidu part of you. The point I'm trying to make is that the only way any real transformation can happen is when innocence has walked into our life. That this person doesn't want your body. This person doesn't want your mind. This person doesn't want your money. They're just there for your soul, or i.e., to bring some healing to your life. But for that to happen, you need to be open and receptive. And that usually takes time. Okay? Now, Gilgamesh wants to change. He doesn't know it, but the very fact that he keeps sleeping around, the very fact that he keeps harassing people, he is restless. He is only after quick fixes, but what he desperately needs on the inside, he needs rest. He needs understanding and wisdom. That's what he really is looking for. Okay? Now, somehow Enkidu needs to be brought to Gilgamesh. Enkidu is not going to walk to civilization. He hates civilization. For those of you in this class who have children or who will one day have children, you will not want your kids to go to public schools. They will learn foul language. You just don't want them to know bad words at the age of 3. You say maybe 10, but certainly not 3. They will be exposed to drugs. You just say, hopefully not at 5, maybe at 15 if I send them to a private school. They will have sex, just not at the age of 12. Okay? Now, Enkidu may imagine that he was created so he could live his life. And that's not the case. The gods created Enkidu for one simple reason. For him to enter the life of Gilgamesh. His existence is about transforming Gilgamesh. He has no other intention. Okay. There is a story that has come to us from Rumi. Any of you have heard of this name, Rumi? He's a Persian poet. It's about this king who one day looks at his favorite servant and says, why don't you go out there and get me some apples? And here's like $100. And this man goes to the bazaar or Lakeshore or Costco. And he says to himself, I am at Costco and there are all these fruits. Why just buy apples? I'll buy all sorts of different fruits. Cantaloupes and watermelons and bananas and oranges. And he comes back to the king's palace with 20 bags. The king looks in the first bag, no apples. Second bag, no apples. All the bags are filled with fruits, but there are no apples. The meaning of the story is this. For those of us in this class who like religious ideas or philosophical ideas, is that go back to Genesis or all the sacred traditions. Human beings are made in the image of God. That's the apple. And our task is to live, embody that image. That is the task. But then we walk into Costco called life. Life has all sorts of things to offer us, except the apple. But all these other things are tantalizing. They are beautiful. Buying a Tesla is beautiful. It's just $50,000. Living in Montclair, Snakewood, beautiful. Houses, 3 million. It means that should you buy a house in Montclair, you have to slave away for the next 30 years just to pay off the mortgage. The gods no longer desire Enkidu to waste his time or to waste his life. But how do you get Enkidu to meet Gilgamesh, a man who refuses to leave Gilgamesh's life or his soul? Well, there is a woman, there is this institution that the ancient people had. It's called the Temple of Love. The Temple of Love is only occupied by women. And these women have one craft, one art that they are really, 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 really good at. The art of lovemaking, i.e. sex. Their task is to give you pleasure, not so much of the body and not so much of the mind, but of your soul. Now, I know some of in this class have been in relationships, and I know some of in this class there came a point where you had to make this difficult decision as a woman. Not so much as a man, because men are punks for the most part, right? As a woman, you say, I have never been in this particular position. I love this man. I am a virgin. What should I do? But the love is so intense, and you're so obsessed and infatuated and intoxicated that you willingly give yourself to this person. Is someone out there? Hello. Now, one of the things that all of us almost in this class have experienced, and for those of you who have not yet experienced this, don't rush into it. It's no big deal, really. You know, it's like just shitting. It's just like that. Now, what usually happens in life is that, so this is me, okay? So there is a mind that I have, there is a body, of course, that I have, and there is a soul that I have. If you're allergic to the word soul, put emotions. Not feelings, but emotions. Emotions that have depth, that have substance, and that have value, okay? Now, Stephanie rightly said, the hustle and bustle of life remove most of the sacred emotions that live inside us, and our minds are devoted to how we can make money to pay rent, to put food on the table, to get rid of the disagreements we have with our companions, to get a better pay at our job. Okay? Now, once in a while, your mind awakens and says, think a little bit. Once in a while, your emotions kind of give you a nudge. Feel a little. Why are you so dead? Sometimes your body says to you, like the Native Americans would say, you know, people for the most part imagine that their heads or their bodies was created to simply carry their heads. That their body has no other function. Okay? So what you have is 3 different worlds, desperately trying to connect, to embody, to be intimate, to unite, to be harmonious, but it doesn't work out that way. Okay? So what happens is you run into Jack or Jackie. Okay? What happens as you grow to need this person because you desire her, okay? And then you're infatuated, then you're obsessed, and at a certain point you say, I am in love. One of the things that love does is the following. Mentally, you keep thinking about this person. Emotionally, you're just wrapped up about this person. Physically, you want to be around this person. For the first time in your life, what happens in moments in those 2-3 weeks when you and I feel deeply in love is that your body, your mind, and your soul are connected, are together. The Trinity is well harmonious. She feels the same way about you. Body, mind, and soul. They are connected as well. Now what happens? Now you guys have this thing called sex, or the act of love. What you do is your body now becomes this container that has sacred emotions of love, and thought-wise, all you want to do is sacrifice yourself to this person. If you're a man, you make sure you don't have an orgasm for the next 50,000 years. Why? Because it's all about her. So, this temple of love is designed for one purpose. The men who are ready to be transformed, they knock on the door, or the women go out looking for men who are ready to be transformed. After a good amount of training, then they have sex. Now, one of the things about sex or love is that it's like butterfly. As long as the wings of a butterfly is untouched by human fingers, it will continue to fly. But the moment the oil that lives in human skin touches the butterfly can no longer fly. It tries to, but it descends and eventually dies. Okay? When we have profound experiences like that, it's very, very difficult. If you've ever had sex with a great amount of love, okay, it's very difficult to have loveless sex unless that particular experience has dimmed and you've forgotten. Now you can go back and be in a casual relationship because love creates lots of joy, but a great amount of anxiety and pain. Because in love you have no power. In love you have no identity. In love you don't exist. In love you're owned by another human being. And when they break you, you say, fuck, you have all of me. I want it back. Have you guys heard that song? I'm so lonely, I guess it's called. That, hey, I don't know how it goes, but it's kind of like this, that, you know, I gave all of myself to you, but you betrayed me. I want myself back now. Give him back to me. Okay? Now, once you have that experience, it's very difficult to go back into life and being casual. Okay? Let me give you a story. And forgive me for me jumping all over the place. I'm not being focused. That's just the way things go. I had a friend from Afghanistan. At the age of 11, in the country in which she lived, Afghanistan, she was... something happened to her. Her uncle did something to her. And that forever changed her. And she became very fearful and frightened of relationships and intimacy. And when your innocence has been taken away from you at such a young age, life from that point on no longer makes sense, especially when you try to tell your parents, but your parents don't believe you. And so they side with the uncle. And once life throws you a hurricane You no longer have a roof. You no longer have walls. You no longer feel safe. And you're profoundly weak and vulnerable. And what you really want to do in life is to gain some power. So what she did, she put herself to medical school. She went to Davis. She got her degrees. She came to Highland Hospital. She did her internship there. And then at a certain point, she got married, thinking that just because you don't remember the molestation, it's no longer inside you. You've forgotten it. You have power now. You're a doctor now. To desire to put her life back together, she gets married. But she doesn't get married because she loves. She gets married because she was so lonely on the inside, despite having lots of friends, and despite being profoundly attractive. And she said, when I came to America, my function was really one thing. She went to Chicago for a while, lived in Chicago. She said, my job from the age 12 or 13 all the way to about 27 was to go out with young men, have them fall in love with me, and then walk away. Since I can't reach my uncle, this is what I will do to men. Okay? So, she gets married, but there is something inside us. Remember the old man who desires to be young? I love my wife. I love my kids. But my life is old. I have lived it day after day after day after day. I love teaching, but these ideas are no longer new to me. They no longer excite or inspire me. She, this young woman, she was old because the experience made her old. She wanted to feel young. She wanted to feel alive. She got married, thinking that marriage is going to resurrect her from the dead, but no. Then one day she goes into the surgery room, and as she is washing her hands to perform surgery, there is a young man from Iran, Persia, and he's washing his hands. She looks at him, and she's married. She looks at him, and she says, oh my God, I feel alive. I feel as if I'm in love. It's what they call snatched. That despite all the things that may live inside you, you're just taken out. Say, love! And because she doesn't want to cheat on her husband, she says, you know what? I'm going to go back to my office, call my boss and say, I can't perform today. Okay? Time passes. She's in the surgery room now. She's performing, cutting someone to pieces. This young man walks in, an intern from UCLA hospital, working at Highlands. He comes in. She can't get out now. She's in the middle of the surgery. Their eyes meet. Three weeks later, they have sex. A month and a half later, she leaves her husband. 3 months later, this young man from Los Angeles goes back to Los Angeles. She remains broken to this day. The name of this harlot or prostitute, her name is Shamat. One of the things that happens is that usually people from the civilized world go into places of innocence, steal things or take things, bring them back to civilization and sell them. Okay? Like we go to certain places in India or certain parts of Africa, we get elephants, we get their horn or teeth or whatever they're called, we bring them back here and we sell them. There is a man in Uruk who hunts animals, sets all these traps in the forest. Animals get caught, animals die. he brings them, he defeathers them, sells them, becomes rich. What is it that Enkidu does? Enkidu doesn't like to see anything in pain. So every time an animal is trapped, he rescues them. Go back to the saying again in the Gospels. And I keep going back to the Gospels because this is a Christian country. You don't hear too much about the Quran. You don't hear too much about the Dhammapada or the Rig Veda or the Bhagavad Gita. So that's why I go back to the Gospels. In the Gospels, what happens? I have not come for the righteous. I have come for the sinners. The righteous feel as if they are good. The righteous are far too arrogant to think themselves to be sinners. The righteous don't have the capacity to see, to hear, to listen, to learn. I only come to the sinners, but not the sort of sinners who go to the church, confess, and walk away freely. Those who are in pain, and that pain does not leave them. They're always in a position of repentance and remorse and shame and guilt. Enkidu in the forest has only one function: to roam around, if there is anything in pain, to heal them, rescue them. So this hunter one day goes and sees all the traps being empty. Goes to his father and says, no animals. I'm losing money. And the reason why there are no animals is because there's this beast in the forest that looks like a human being but really isn't. He keeps letting them free. What should I do? And the father says, go to the temple, grab a prostitute. Her name is going to be Shamat. Take this woman to Enkidu. And then once this woman sees Enkidu, tell her to go near him. And then have her disrobe. And that's exactly what this woman does. They go to the forest, they find Enkidu, and then the hunter looks at the woman and says, go now, go, go, go. The woman goes, and the moment Enkidu turns to his right and sees the woman, Shamat disrobes. And we are talking about a time where there is no underwear and there are no bras. Okay? She's completely naked. And you know what happens to Enkidu? He sits and simply looks at this woman for 6 days and 6 nights. No sex. He just watches her. I don't know if you've ever been to a cathedral that's really huge, and the stained glasses and the arches and all the sculptures that's there, and you simply stand there. You forget to pray. You forget to read the Bible. That's why you went in there. But the place just amazes you. And Enkidu simply sits back and just worships the body of this woman. Now that is true feminism. Okay? For 6 days and 6 nights. You can't worship anything if you're not attracted to it. You can't worship anything if you're not inspired by it. You can't worship anything if you're not caught by it. And Enkidu is caught. And that's the dangerousness of inspiration. You get caught. I was 13 when the revolution happened in Iran in the 1980s. I dared the soldiers to shoot towards me. I didn't mind dying because I was connected to justice. My people were behind me. We were all screaming the same thing. Inspiration. On the 7th night, they rest. Now, I don't want to make this into an X-rated class, even though it would be really, really fun to go to discuss the ins and outs of human sexuality. Enkidu and this woman now lay together for 6 days and 6 nights. They have sex. Forget Gilgamesh, Enkidu and Shema, this woman. Think back to the time where you yourself were in love. Not the 16, 17-year-olds. Okay? People over the age of like 95. Okay? That how much you dreaded leaving the arms of the person you loved because you had to go to work. Or you had to go home because you were afraid of your parents catching you after midnight. That something about you felt complete. And at that moment, you don't need God. You don't need Jesus Christ. You are fulfilled. Love creates for all of us this Garden of Eden. And there is no other place to go. And there is no need to go. But something really devastating happens. At a certain point, Gilgamesh gets up and walks around. And he comes to realize something about him has changed. His innocence is gone. You have lots of friends. But the moment you fall in love, you disconnect from anyone and everyone. And they keep calling, you don't pick up. You don't give a shit about them. They are meaningless and irrelevant and insignificant for you. Now, one of the nice things about this event is that you need to be contaminated. You need the innocence of Martin Luther King Jr. to be contaminated by the reality of racism. You need the innocence of a mother to be contaminated by her daughter being killed by a drunk driver so she can create the MAD movement. Mothers Against Drunk Drivers. Some contaminations are really, really good and inspirational because they do create transformation. Do you have any questions? No questions? Really? Nothing? Yeah.
This is the first time you mentioned Martin Luther King.
Yeah.
Why is this the first time that you mentioned economics a lot?
No real reason. And I think mostly because Martin Luther, very much like Mahatma Gandhi and very much like Jesus, they were very passive in regards to social issues. Their path was one of forgiveness, one of turning the other cheek. Now, I don't know, maybe that's the right path to take. But I think Barabbas was right in his approach to Jesus. Because Jesus was always about forgiveness and whoever, takes up the sword will perish by the sword. And Barabbas looks at him and says, so what you're telling me is that I have to stand here, watch the Romans rape our women and kill our children, and for me to simply sit back, watch all of this, and just forgive. I can't do that. Now, for some people, such hippie philosophy of life or passive philosophy of life, it may work. And I think Jesus was the way he was because Look, if the stories are right, and I don't think they are right, but nevertheless, 2,000 years ago at the age of 12, no one leaves their parents. But that kid did. You know, you don't leave your town. You serve your parents until the day they die. Okay? Everybody marries. Nobody becomes a monk. Okay, so Jesus at the age of 12 leaves. Now, leaving your parents at that age 2,000 years ago means there's a great amount of detachment you have from your parents. There's also a tremendous amount of detachment you have from your culture, from your town, from your villages, from the village, your friends. Okay? And then you go somewhere. And there are stories. Goes to Egypt, goes to India, goes to Persia. Forget those things. But he comes back after 18 long years. What does he do? Does he say, maybe I should go and say hello to my mom, whom I haven't seen for about 18 years? No. He just goes straight to the synagogue. You know, he never marries. He doesn't have children. So for someone who doesn't have anything, it's very easy to come and say, oh, you know what? Fuck marriage. Why do you want to get married? Children, they suck. Life sucks too. You know, if on the other hand, Jesus was a guy who was fully devoted to his community, to his parents, maybe got married, and maybe he fell in love with his kids, then maybe his philosophy would be vastly different. It's always easy for people who have nothing to say all these beautiful concepts and try to inspire us. But for those of us who live life and we know the complexities of life, you know, you're not going to forgive. I mean, life is dangerous. Yeah.
So that's, people talk about that, but I've experienced after death, and they see visions when they die, and maybe they wake up in the hospital and they say that they see Jesus and all. Do you believe in those type of visions, or do you think it's a psychological, or is there some truth to some of that?
So let me just give you a story, and then we'll go home. Okay. And this story may not even be relevant to your question, but it's a nice story nevertheless. Yeah, okay. There was a woman, she was a nun, and she had wonderful dreams and visions. And so after about 20 or so years of having these experiences, one day she wakes up and she realizes that she has this headache and it's not going away. She goes to the doctor, and the doctor comes to realize that she has a tumor in her brain. Now, neuroscience is a strange thing because it's really the study of your brain and what goes on inside that particular engine. What they have now discovered is that there are actually places in your brain that they're called like the visual cortex, or certain emotions that kind of come out of you the moment they're touched or pushed. And so what this doctor told this woman is that, you know, that where this tumor is located in your brain is just pressing on the point where you begin to see things, have visions. And he asks this woman, have you had visions for the past 20 years? I dream about Jesus, I see Jesus, him and I walk to Pete's Coffee, and we have coffee or latte every day. So the doctor says, listen, I don't know about these experiences, but what I can tell you is the following. We can remove the tumor. If we remove the tumor, there is a 90% chance that you will no longer have any visions. If we don't remove the tumor, you will continue to have the visions, and eventually this tumor will kill you. What do you want to do? Now, being a very Christian, devout, religious woman, she says, I believe in God. My visions of Jesus Christ have nothing to do with this tumor. I have faith. I trust. I'm going to go have the surgery. The tumor is removed. She no longer has visions. 2 years later, she commits suicide. Now, look. Imagine that you have believed that the people who've raised you, they are in fact your biological father and mother. And you've lived with that truth for the past like 30 years. Your mother gets sick. Now she needs blood transfusion. You volunteer. You are, after all, her biological daughter, at least you think. You take some tests, and then you realize it's a no match. And then your father tells you, after 30 years, we adopted you. Now, you may think that's going to be okay for you, but it's not. And then from that point on, you say, I want to go figure out who my parents are. Even though these people have done you, lots of good works. I think when you have identified yourself as a Christian, as a nun, as a religious woman, as someone who has faith, and all of a sudden you may come to realize they were all figments of your own imagination, who are you then? And it's too much, because it takes a long time. I mean, one of the difficulties of retirement, for someone like me, for example, this has been my platform for the past almost 40 years. Once I leave the stage, who am I? What is the function of these ideas? Who do I talk to about these ideas? Are these ideas going to be relevant for me? And to some extent, you could say retirement is the death of Amir Sabzavari, at least who he has been for the past like 45 years. And now you have to give yourself another birth. Maybe I'll start vacuuming the house. Again, forgive my many digressions. Tomorrow when we come back, we'll finish up the story, hopefully. Make sure to come to class with questions, if you have any. Have a nice evening. Stay safe. There are some more cookies up here. Please take one, or two, or three.
Can you do a video? Can you do that?